This meeting is being recorded.
This is the board moderator. It is now 10:55. This session has resumed recording.
Thank you so much, moderator. We will move on to item 6, the executive officer's report. Ms. Yamaguchi.
Chair, I don't want to repeat the written report that was in the packet, but I did, of course, want to echo your welcome to Ms. Tara Rhodes, Mr. Abraham Hill, and also to congratulate Mr. Maxey on his reappointment. And since we did discuss the budget and finance, and we had Ms. Holmes discuss the department, I don't actually know. I think actually I'm going to just defer to questions at this point.
Are there any questions from the board members?
Following bit is that you can.
Hello. Yes.
Whoever, and if anybody had and Kate.
Hello.
Ms. Turner?
Yes. Okay. So I have your exact report before me, Ms. Yamaguchi. But is this where you discuss the issue of the collection of the fees from the license going through revocation and reinstatement?
Ms. Turner, I'm sorry. Are you asking cost for somebody?
Hello, this is the moderator.
Yes.
Ms. Turner, I hear background noise coming from your microphone.
All right. Yes. Yes, Mr. Yamaguchi, I was asking you, is this where you discussed about the issue of collection of the fees from the since that are licensees that are going through reinstatement or probation?
No, Ms. Turner, we're going to be discussing cost recovery.
Cost recovery. Okay, all right. I just wanted to acknowledge that I had seen that. Okay, thank you. That was it.
I don't see any other questions. Are there other questions from the board?
Madam Chair, this is Ken Swenson. Part of the report involved actions taken by the executive officer on school matters. If the board was so inclined, it could ratify those actions taken by the executive officer by recalling agenda item number 5 relating to schools, and then entertaining a motion to ratify the actions taken by the executive officer in the executive officer review of educational programs. Thank you.
Mr. Swenson, do we need a motion to do that?
Recalling the
Item 5.
prior agenda item would be within the chair's discretion. And then you could proceed by regular motion to ratify the actions taken by the executive officer set forth in the report dated November 20th, 2020.
So we would like to call item 5 back to the agenda. Is that correct? I'm not really sure I know exactly how to do this so that is appropriate.
And state on the record that you're recalling agenda item number 5.
Okay.
For purposes of entertaining a motion to ratify the actions taken by the executive director in the report dated November 20th, 2020.
Okay, I'm calling back November 5 to ask for a motion to ratify the actions taken by the executive director from November 2020.
Yes.
To collect rent during COVID. There
So,
was an attorney.
Ms. Turner, you have your hand raised?
yes, I'm ready to make the motion.
Thank you.
So I move that we ratify the actions taken by the executive officer based on her report dated November 2020.
Do we have a second?
Second the motion, Alita Carpenter.
Thank you. I will do a roll call vote. Ms.
Madam Chair, we
Amazzoli-
need public discussion before
Oh,
we
yes, sir.
do the roll call. Thank you.
My apologies. Is there any public discussion of this?
This is the moderator. I do not see any at this time.
Thank you, moderator. I will now do a roll call vote. Ms. Amazola de Herrera,
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Durking,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Maxey,
Yes.
Ms. Norton,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Rubalcaba,
Yes.
Ms. Turner,
Yes.
and I'm Carol Mountain, and I vote yes. That's approved unanimously. The executive committee report, once again, I don't want to be redundant, but I did want to mention, and we heard this again yesterday, that it is of great concern to the executive committee and most likely to the rest of the board that our disciplinary hearing schedule is all the way out to, I believe, 2023. Ms. Yamaguchi, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
And that is something that the board will absolutely need to look at because it's of great concern for public safety. So that is definitely something that we will want to consider in the future. I see Ms. Norton's hand is raised. Did you have a comment?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Thank you. And really it's I just want to make a comment regarding the way we are now doing all of the committee reports. And while I understand that they are all webcast and that we can listen to the recordings, the way the reports are coming out now, which is basically, sorry.
Really?
Which is basically your agendas. There's really little for us to be able to see in the meeting minutes that we are then approving without having to be forced to go back and listen ad hoc, even with the timestamps, to get the full gist of the conversation and to be able to actually tell what was happening. You have to listen to the whole thing. So I'd just like to make that comment, and I'm wondering if there is a way that we can have a little bit more meat about what happened in the committee, as opposed to having to go back and listen to the entire committee meeting via the WebEx recording. So I just wanted to make that statement.
I'd like to defer this to Ms. Yamaguchi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Norton. I absolutely do understand the frustration here, but at this point in time, there are a lot of staffing issues as well. But for the purposes of the public record, and actually the board does not specifically approve or not approve the committee reports, and they're not strictly speaking minutes. But I understand that, and my suggestion to the president and vice president would be for us to discuss this a bit in the next executive committee meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. I think that is actually a really good suggestion.
I appreciate that as well. I realize that we are not approving the report, but as a full board, the committees report back to the full board. And the way that it is currently being done, there is nothing being reported back to us other than, here is our recording, go ahead and listen to it. Other than the agenda.
That's good feedback. That's very good feedback. All right. Are there other comments or questions from the executive officer's report? I don't see any other hands raised. Okay. Shall we move on to item 8A, which is the licensing division report?
Yes, this is Alita Carpenter. The Licensing and Evaluations Committee met via WebEx on October 16th. I am the chair of this committee by default because I'm the only member on it, and I would welcome any of our new members of the board to join me on this committee. Where are we? We discussed the strategic plan and the committee's role. Staff will provide a spreadsheet to track our goals and ensure that we meet the listed milestones. Ms. Brown, who's the licensing division manager, provided an update on vacancies in the licensing division. We discussed the process. We discussed the processing statistics in relation to the pandemic. The staff is really doing a great job maintaining the processing times. A comprehensive statistical report is always included in our board packets. So it's really important that the board members review the numbers and provide feedback to our committee. The Licensing and Evaluations Committee will continue to work with the licensing division to ensure that our licensees and applicants continue to receive the outstanding customer service that we've been providing. Meeting adjourned at 10:45 a.m. Are there any questions?
Ms. Carpenter, when you were in this meeting, did you guys discuss if we are getting the same number of applicants that we were getting before the pandemic? Or has that number changed? Was that discussed?
I can't recall specifics on that.
Okay.
Yamaguchi, do you recall that?
Actually, let me defer to Ms. Brown because the packet does contain all the statistics from 2017 to 2020. So you'll see from month to month, and you should be able to compare the rates in which we've accepted or processed or all the other transactions. So that was discussed briefly, but I don't know that we made a special point of any trend that we saw really different this year as opposed to during the COVID as opposed to last year. It seems to be proportional.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, the exact numbers are contained in our board packet, if you'd like to look at that.
Yeah. I guess I just asked because this is if our numbers are down, we know that it will definitely affect the future of healthcare, the nursing shortage, all these other things that come into play when we don't have enough people testing. And I know that some people have had to defer their class size or decrease their class size related to lack of clinical spots. So I was just asking as a matter of information.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I do not see any at this time.
All right. We can move on to item 9. That would be the Legislative and Regulations Committee report. Mr. Durking.
This is the moderator, Dr. Mountain. We haven't discussed item AA, the licensing.
My apologies. Let's go back to the licensing division report. Ms. Brown.
You're live.
Am I live? Okay. Hi, this is Shelley. So the licensing division report was included in your packet. Did anyone have any questions?
I do not see any questions from the board members.
This is the moderator. I see none from the public.
Ms. Brown, do you have additional comments that you'd like to make?
No.
But this is Elaine, and I would like to underscore again that the licensing staff, for the most part, has been working from home, and they come in about 1 day a week or so to pick up and drop off stuff, and they've been doing a tremendous job. But I also want to commend Shelley and Ivan Brandt and now Crystal Coronel, our second supervisor, on what a fine job they're doing in leading that team.
Excellent, thank you. Now we are ready for item 9A, the Legislative and Regulations Committee report. Mr. Durking.
Yes, good morning, Madam President, members of the board, and welcome to our new members. As chair of the Leg-Reg Committee, I'd like to report that the committee met on October 2nd by teleconference. Staff and legal counsel were also in attendance. Committee report is found in the meeting packet. We'll have an opportunity for questions following the presentation. During the meeting, the most recent movement of bills of interest of the board were discussed by Ms. Yamaguchi, which I'll summarize for you right now. We considered AB 2028, and that relates to AB 88 compliance of state agencies regarding publication of meeting material, most specifically relating to website publication. On September 1st, 2020, it was ordered to the inactive file by unanimous consent. Second bill of consideration was AB 2854, and this relates to the sunset legislation and specifically the default decision authority by the EO. And it was held in Senate committee, the BP and ED committee in the Senate on June 23rd, 2020. Finally, we considered SB 1474, a Senate committee on the author was Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development. And what it does is it extends the function of the board through January 1st, 2022. It was chaptered by the Secretary of State, 929 of 2020. So regarding some of the policy items, I would now defer to our executive officer for a summary of Senate hearings, report, and legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, in terms of the sunset hearing and report and our legislation, pending legislation, hopeful legislation. First of all, the Assembly and Senate committees have let us know that we are certainly still scheduled to be heard this spring, but they have not set a date. My guess would be mid-March. We also don't know whether or not the legislature is going to operate in open, and allow public access to the rooms and the hearing chambers. I am told at this point that most of the business will be conducted remotely, but we'll be waiting for updates on that as well. The report itself, I think most of the board members will recall, and I think I we attached it for the new members, was submitted last year for a hearing for this year. And mostly this has not changed. We have been asked to provide at least an update with regard to the board's response to COVID-19. And these are strictly operational issues. So we'll be working on that. We need to submit that very soon. I believe I had thought January, but I believe it's December actually. So we'll be working on that, and we'll be updating a few other things in terms of our statistics and some of our fiscal information. And we will be, of course, sharing that with the board as we get ready to submit that. Now, in great detail, we've attached in the summit and in the packet the summary of legislative concepts for both practice acts, vocational nursing and psychiatric technicians. So, by the way, let me give a great amount of thanks and appreciation to our staff who've been working very, very diligently. Mr. Tim Matsumoto, Mr. Affairs, with some other help from our NECs and our budget fiscal staff, to really walk through our practice acts in microscopic detail. And I think the board should recall that we discussed these concepts for the most part to prepare for what we had hoped would have been legislation this year, that it's going to be carried forward. I think the concepts remain constant, that we do want, of course, to create and implement the fee for the educational programs. We want to create cite and fine authority for the education division, the NECs. We want to require email addresses for our licensees and be able to communicate directly with them via email. And those would be like the highest priority items for us. There's a vast amount of technical cleanup, things like changing he/she to their, things like changing school to program, and other updates, and removing some obsolete clauses. I don't believe we need a board motion, as those were already approved, but we did want you to see this. Our next step in this case will be to flesh out actual language. We hope to move draft language first off to the department, and then to bring it back to the Legend Regs committee for a final yay, nay, and a final yay for the board in February. I don't believe that we will be asked for actual language by the bill introduction deadline of February, but we do need to be as prepared as we possibly can. That is item 4, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I believe we had some motions coming from the committee. Would you like to address those, Elaine?
We do, sir, but I see a hand from Ms. Norton. I think she has a question.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you. I did have a question. So I did listen to the meeting. It's very long. Thank you for giving the high points of it. I do have a concern or a question about, and I'm looking at the list of changes that will be made. I imagine that these are the regulatory cleanups. Looking specifically at 2060.8. And through all of these, I see that the majority of them are changing his to their, or deleting this in front of that, or very insignificant changes. But I did see one that said add language, that LVNs may not perform or administer medications that require a level of assessment other than basic assessment. So what is that language, and can someone speak to what that really means? Because I cannot ascertain what you mean by a level of assessment other than a basic assessment. But it is specified here that we'll be adding language.
And if I may, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Norton.
Yes.
Great question. I'm so glad you asked. I believe we discussed at the committee level, and I believe we brought it up at the August board meeting as well, that there's an increasing amount of scrutiny and an increasing amount of potential controversy. I think the board saw some disciplinary cases, and I know that we saw some litigation with regard to our licensees administering Botox and similar, I won't even call them medications, but cosmetic treatments, I believe. And the fact that studied opinion has shown that that level of treatment is outside the scope of the LVN and the psych techs. So what we had wanted to do with regard to both our statutes and subsequently with the regs is to clarify that. We're not looking to expand the scope or decrease the scope. We're looking to clarify the language so that our licensees aren't going to be placed in this kind of jeopardy where they could potentially be directed to perform something that they're not authorized to do in their scope of practice. Mr. Chair?
So I understand that, but I think we're all aware that our scope of practice language is unclear at best. I guess my main concern is, will we see the language that gets added, or who's determining what language gets added? I guess that's my concern, and then because it's in two places. There's 2860, which says to add language to prohibit injection for cosmetic or dermatological treatments, which would, i.e. Botox. But then down below, it says may not perform or administer medications. It's very broad. It doesn't say what medications. It doesn't say how it's tied to anything. It just says administer medications. And so I'm concerned that that will be misconstrued, and I'm wondering who will see the language, or will we see the language, or because this is an addition of language, so it's language that we have not seen yet.
And that's actually well taken. Yes, the board, we will be going through the regular channels here. So as we move from the list of concepts that's before you now to actual legislative language, that legislative language will first go to the Leg and Regs Committee. And actually, you know, I think actually we did want to the Education and Practice Committee to look at it as well. So we kind of need to, you know, so we see this moving in January where we will show some actual draft language, clear language, and be able to vet it with the committees and then present that to the full board in February.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. If there are no further questions.
Are there other questions? Thank you, Mr. Durking. And thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi.
We're not quite done yet. No.
Oh, we're not, oh, that's right. We have a
couple more things.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So our EO just provided a summary of the legislative concepts for both vocational nursing and also psychiatric technicians. And so I'll move to the 2021 rulemaking concepts, and we have an action item here after our EO's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the Friday meeting of the committee, the October 2nd meeting, the committee moved that the board would adopt the public comments and the recommended responses and authorize the staff to incorporate those public comments. Hopefully you had a chance to review those documents, and they're titled Public Comment and Responses for AB 2138, and there are two, of course, for the VNs and the PTs. So if the board members had any questions or comments on those at this time.
Are there any questions from the board members?
All right. And so that is an action item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would ask Madam President if she wants us to complete the report and then do the action items.
Yes, please. I think that would be excellent.
All right,
Great.
very good. So at this point, maybe I should just summarize what this particular action item would be. Would that be appropriate?
I think that would be very helpful.
All right, thank you. So at this point, regarding the public comment and recommended responses for VNs and nurses rulemaking, the Reg Committee moves that the board adopt the public comments and recommended responses as reflected in the proposed language received in the meeting packet, including minor technical, grammatical, and non-substantive changes, and authorizes staff to incorporate the public comments and recommended responses into the final phase rulemaking for 16 CCR sections 2521 and 2522. And then we have a corollary. The Legislative and Regulations Committee moves that the board adopt the public comments and recommended responses as reflected in the proposed language received in the meeting packet, including minor technical, grammatical, non-substantive changes, and authorizes staff to incorporate the public comments and recommended responses into the final phase rulemaking for 16 CCR sections 2578 and 2579 relating to psychiatric technicians. So those would be the two action items. And then we would now hear from Ms. Yamaguchi regarding what else we covered at the Reg meeting.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. The other rulemaking actions, and these are our updates, by the way, we have, of course, managed to move our Section 100 application, which placed into regulations the fee increase that went into effect in January of 2019. But we also have the regulation package being worked on that the board did vote on in August to increase the fees additionally in the year 2022. As you know, at this point, this is going to be subject, I think, to a little bit of discussion and possible recalculation. But I want to let the board know that we have been working on the language and moving that forward. Staff has also been working to move forward the program pass rates standards. As you'll recall, we wanted to place in regulations that minimum NCLEX passing standard for the programs at 75%. The board did vote on that again in August to move that forward. I'm pleased to say that that package has been moving forward. And finally, our magnum opus, if you will, on Article 5, that we do hope to move forward a very, very large and comprehensive update and refinement of Article 5 pertaining to nursing education. And of course, the parallel to that in Article 5 for the Psych Techs Practice Act. We have been working to work through a number of issues. We've been consulting with counsel and with other experts. We should actually have some language to share with the committee first and then the board in January and February. Mr. Chair.
Yamaguchi. So we also considered elements of the strategic plan. We also considered specifics regarding the psychiatric technician profession name change, which we've heard about at this board in the past, and considered the 2022 legislative conference. Do you have any updates on those items, Ms. Yamaguchi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Both these items are very much in the discussion phase. I know that you would think that'd be a very simple thing to just change the name of a profession, but it truly is not. But I think not to delve into overly deep discussion, but I'm certainly welcome to it. I know that we've had a lot of discussion, both at the board level and in public comment, about the title of psychiatric technician and whether or not that is accurate and appropriate to the training and the scope of those professionals. And this was raised in our strategic plan, as you know. It's something that we hope to start addressing. And I've had a little bit of a conversation with board member Rubalcaba and a few other folks, including the California Association of Psychiatric Technicians. There's a significant amount of interest in this, but I will remind you, of course, that not only has COVID-19 really set us back in terms of our proactive agenda. This is a 5-year strategic plan, and this is something that's going to take a great amount of careful and public, really, discussion and attention. There's going to be a lot. I mean, we don't even have an idea really of what that title should be. So this is a subject, I think, for a great amount of public discussion with our stakeholders and with other experts. So we hope to be able to move forward on this in 21, and if not, certainly in 22. But like I said, it's something that not only is changing it, something that's going to take a great deal of time and effort in terms of just statute and regulations. It's operationally going to take a great deal of planning and implementation to make that change, to implement that change. So, and not even just for us, but for the folks like CAPT out in the field, who will have to, like us, change their names and logos and legal documents. But actually, and let me pause if anybody wants to discuss or ask questions about that issue, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yamaguchi. Madam President?
Are there comments? It looks like Ms. Norton has a comment.
Thank you for the ability to comment. I agree that this topic is something that will need to be vetted and thoroughly thought through, and it would be, in my opinion, wise to make sure that the proper steps are followed and that we have time to address it in totality as opposed to trying to rush something through. So I appreciate that it is part of the strategic plan and that it will be addressed 2021 and beyond. So
Thank you very much, Ms. Norton. Madam President, other than the 2 action items, that concludes the Ledge Reg report.
Thank you.
This is the moderator. There is a question from the public. COVID, 1 moment. Dr. Mountain, I will unmute that microphone now.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Kobe Pizzati from the California Association of Psychiatric Technicians. I have a couple of questions on the legislative report and the name change. I saw that the name change was a little bit further down in the agenda, so I didn't know if that was a separate action, or not action item, but a separate discussion item, or if it was part of this discussion. But my first question is, where do we stand in the school fee legislative portion our plans for the I guess sunset review bills that are going to be coming up. That would be question number one. Do we have language? Do we have consensus? Have we figured out schedule? Where is this in terms of moving forward? As I stated at the last meeting, I certainly think that before we increase fees on the licensees, we should establish a fee for the schools. So that would be question number one. And then as for the name change, CAPT is very interested in this. Ms. Yamaguchi, you're correct. This would be a substantial change for us in terms of all of our legal documents. And it would be very, very hard for us to do, but we are actually very interested in doing this. However, with that said, what CAPT would recommend is producing a stakeholder committee that would bring in all the parties that are vested in this idea and have some sort of impact or be impacted by the change of the name to find out what are the impacts to them, as well as come up with a potentially appropriate name that really summarizes the responsibilities of the psychiatric technicians in a clear and concise name. You know, everybody knows what a licensed vocational nurse is and does, and it's a nationwide name. Virtually nobody knows what a psychiatric technician does. So it will definitely help. Changing the name to include nurse in some way will definitely help in educating the public and potentially bring in more people to the schools, bring in, more interest into the profession, as well as there could be a federal implication here where the reimbursement rates for psychiatric technicians might even actually go up from the federal government as they recognize them as nurses. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts, and I would love to hear some feedback from the board members, especially on the creation of a stakeholder committee to advise the board on how to move forward with this. And I'd like to say congratulations to Abraham Hill on his appointment to the board.
Are there comments from the board? I see that there's additional comments in the audience as well. Ms. Rubalcava.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Kobe. I agree that that maybe a stakeholder committee kind of getting all that together would definitely help to create some ideas and kind of really get into surrounding the idea of what the psychiatric technician does and how we can best promote and recognize our trained professionals in this field. And also, of course, that will help the public to get the services that they need.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I was reading that the demand for the psychiatric technician is certainly increasing related to COVID and the recognition of how this is affecting people and their mental health and their mental well-being, and that there probably will be more opportunities, and it would be nice if there's a clear perception by the public of what a psychiatric technician does. Moderator, it does look like we have other comments.
We do. The first person, I will unmute them in the order that they raise their hands. First is Anthony.
Thank you.
Unmute his mic now.
Good morning. My name is Anthony Harvey. I am a licensed psychiatric technician, and I just wanted to speak today and show my support for the name change. I just wanted to share briefly that I have worked in the state facilities, and I've also worked in the private facilities. And working in the private facilities, I worked alongside RNs and VNs, and I have noticed that we as licensed psychiatric technicians do not get the recognition because we do not have the title of nurse in our title. And during my time working in those facilities, I do the same job as the RNs and the VNs as far as med passes, intake assessments, reading of labs, talking to doctors, giving my professional opinion to doctors as to what is going on with my patient. Yet I do not receive the same sort of notification because I don't have nurse in my title. I have worked a specialized field that is for the patients that need psychiatric care. The VNs and the RNs that I have worked with said, well, we're just doing this because it's an easy job to get because we're nurses and they want to hire nurses. And we're just doing this until we get something better in a non-psych facility. And I listened to them talk about how they have no or little psychiatric training. And I feel that we are constantly overlooked for positions in the private sector because we don't have nurse in our title, yet we have much of the same training that a VN does. And I think that changing our name and adding that nurse to the title would help psychiatric technicians get positions and also help with this nursing shortage. And I thank the board for giving me this time to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Can you please lower the raised hand feature on your end, please? This is the moderator. We do have Catherine, public member. I will unmute your mic now. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, my name is Catherine Sassati. I am a licensed psychiatric technician. I have been for a very long time. I can't remember numbers right now. I have found myself working in the state system as an LPT, and I actually found my love for what I do in the community. One thing that I don't love about my position in the community is the fact that my title does not reflect my scope. This has been a long time issue that we have, come to see and to appreciate and to try to fix. Now COVID has happened and it has made it that much harder, okay? Because we do not get the recognition or the pay that comes with having a nursing title, but we are put to do all of the work. I want to give an actual personal example of something that happens frequently in the community. Because the LPT license is not well understood, people hear technician and they think car technician or air conditioning technician or something very techy, not at a nurse level, okay? For instance, this has happened a number of times to me in a crisis community where EMTs bring in patients that are, fully restrained in actual crisis on holds, and we cannot accept them. My license as an LPT, EMTs will not allow me to sign for the patients that come in because I'm not a nurse. That's what they say. However, COVID has now started. There is a huge shortage for nursing. I have to garb up and do nursing work on COVID patients, but I'm not a nurse, according to them. And like I said, if it was a matter of just the name being a barrier, which it is for employment other places, that would be hard enough. But now, based on our scope, we are actually having to physically put ourselves into more danger than we normally would have before without getting the pay or the recognition as a nurse. And that's just something that I think, especially with the way that things are changing, and there's such a shortage for healthcare working in this right now, we have a whole area, a whole field of people that are more than capable of working out there that are not getting those jobs just because of what the title is. And I just thank the board for giving me an opportunity to speak. Just hearing it from an old school psych tech here, that it is kind of a problem now. And as soon as we can get something going to like at least assist us to get a better mouthpiece of what we are, I think that would be a big, big help. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Thank you, Catherine. Can you please lower the raised hand feature? Board members, I have public member Sarah Powers. Sarah, your mic is unmuted.
Yes, hi, my name is Sarah Powers. I thank the board for giving me this opportunity to speak on this issue, which I think the issue of adding a nurse to the psych tech title is a priority, is something that psych techs, in my opinion, have been advocating for on many different levels for years. I myself have been licensed since 2005, and it's been quite an adventure with not having that nurse title. I worked in the state system in which I supervised LVNs, RNs, and other types of nurses and mental health professionals. Moving to the community, of course, I don't have those same opportunities. Also, in the regards of national, federal level jobs, I have moved out of state. I have firsthand experienced the difficulties in making people or educating people on what a psych tech can do, on my scope, on my experience. I really feel like prioritizing this issue, the suggestion of making a stakeholder committee is great. I really feel it's a priority, not something to be put off past 2021 in light of COVID. I feel like it should be more of a priority issue. Like adding nurse to our title would give the public and ourselves a more appropriate, more professional, more significant readout of what we can do. We are extremely capable to be helping in all kinds of ways. Personally, right now, I work crisis in the community. We need so much more than what we have. And I just thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to speak. And we definitely look forward to speaking more about this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please lower your raised hand feature? This is the moderator. We have another public member by the name of Chris Lawrence. Chris, your mic is unmuted.
Nervous right now. Sorry. I was going to read a variety of statements from from fellow psych techs that had submitted, but one of ours wasn't able to make it today, so I'm going to read her statement instead. So I'll just start with that. California psychiatric technicians complete 1,530 educational hours in theory and clinicals. This is also the same educational hour requirements for vocational nurses. According to both psychiatric technician law and the Vocational Nurse Practice Act, both state that curriculum will be no less than 1,530 hours with 576 theory hours, 954 clinical hours, and 54 hours in pharmacology. Psychiatric technicians work in state hospitals, prisons, and private psychiatric facilities. We would be valuable in emergency departments, working with veterans and VA, assisting with testing and support of COVID-19 positive patients, 911 call crisis responders, community health facilities for psychiatric clients, including clients with developmental, intellectual disabilities. Only in a few of these facilities we are allowed to be hired, and even fewer are psychiatric technicians recognized as the nursing staff, even though we are qualified to provide the nursing care that our education curriculum, scope of practice, and license allows us to legally perform. We are even too often overlooked in advanced managerial or supervisory roles within certain companies because we are not vocational nurses and because we do not have the word nurse in our title. Because we do not have the word nurse in our title, in our formal titles, many employers don't know we would be an excellent addition to their teams. One unfortunate issue with this latter example is that many of these facilities misunderstood our titles. Many of us have had to educate employers in order to obtain these jobs. However, we should not have to explain why the word nurse is not in our titles, but that we are licensed and able to carry out the requirements expected of us. There are so many experiences we have had, so many negative ways that we have been treated and spoken to and about, so many opportunities that have not included us, or we have been passed over for simply not having the word nurse in our title. Part of our psychiatric technician pledge states that we pledge myself to continue my development of professional competence and complementing scientific study, improving therapeutic techniques, and maintaining high standards of leadership in the field of psychiatric technology. I'd like to point out that these Psychiatric Technician Code of Ethics were adopted in September of 1986. Here are other important and relevant ethics statements. The psychiatric technician assumes responsibility and accountability for individual nursing judgments and actions, for the quality and extent of services performed. The key word here is nursing, and again, these Code of Ethics were adopted in 1986. The psychiatric technician participates in activities that contribute to the ongoing development of the profession. This is one of the reasons why we are here advocating for ourselves and our clients. The psychiatric technician participates in the profession's effort to implement and improve the profession's standard of practice. Again, we are here because being recognized as nurses helps our clients receive care from qualified and uniquely trained individuals as they deserve. We no longer want to be overlooked for positions that are specifically trained for only because we do not carry the word nurse in our title. Our scope of practice has outgrown the title of technician. This title was appropriate 50 plus years ago, prior to the job requiring a license and nursing education. This is simply not the case any longer. The job has evolved, therefore, so should our title. We're here to advocate for our profession. We are here to advocate for our clients. We have the necessary qualifications and have the experiences to make a significant and positive impact because of our unique skill set and education. We are absolutely our nurses, and it's time for our legal professional title to celebrate with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Can you please lower the raised hand feature? Thank you. I see no other public comments.
I see comments from Ms. Yamaguchi and Mr. Hill. Ms. Yamaguchi, you've had your hand up for a while.
Actually, why don't you allow Mr. Hill to speak first?
All right, Mr. Hill.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the licensed psychiatric technicians who spoke up today, Kobe, Anthony, Sarah, Chris. I feel the passion in advocating for our title here. I sense the urgency, and I understand the urgency personally. When I worked in the medical field, I had to hold myself to higher standards, higher competencies, especially when I'm working with VNs and RNs. I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I would like to urge the board to consider exploring the creation of that stakeholders committee so that we can explore a possible title change. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Ms. Yamaguchi?
Chair. Oh, what great public statements, and I'm so pleased that everyone could log on and share their thoughts with them. And let me see if I can't sum up a few of the points. First off, I agree that putting together a stakeholder task group or advisory group of sorts is really, I think, one of the best ways to move forward on this. So I think my suggestion right now, well, it's not noticed for action, but my suggestion would be for the executive committee to discuss, I think, the parameters, and I think possibly a timeline to do so, starting up in, say, January. And it absolutely needs to be as broad and inclusive as we possibly can do. But, you know, as a footnote to that, to be as broad and inclusive and to be as detailed as I think we need to be, it is going to take some time. It's you know, this is exactly why we had discussed recommending to the board that we include this in our sunset bill this year, but we realized that it would just not be possible to do a good job of creating that discussion. So like I said, I think we're on the right path here. And again, I really value everyone's input, and I hope to hear much, much more. And I forget actually which of the speakers mentioned this, but you're right. There is an out-of-state job portability issue because at this point, there are only a few other states that have psychiatric technicians licensed in a similar configuration. But elsewhere, there are people doing this job, and we need to be able to figure out how that translates and how that works. Because, as I said, again, you're right that because nobody outside of, for example, the state hospitals here really has that firm grasp on what this job, what this profession entails. So this is, by the way, as a footnote, we had been working already on putting together some public information materials for when we are advocating our sunset bill. And one of those pieces is absolutely explaining to legislators and decision makers what our licensees do, where they work, how they are educated and trained. Because you're right, there is absolutely a lack of understanding and deep knowledge about these highly trained professionals. But then to back up to Mr. Pizzotti's question, as far as our fees, yes, our intent, and you know, the board has approved the inclusion of the program fee language in our sunset legislation request. The actual schedule of who pays what when is being worked out. Actually, the what is in the draft we have, but the when, the schedule, we're still working on fine-tuning that. But as we've discussed before, it is absolutely true that we must have that fee created and implemented right as soon as possible. But it is also true and that the regulatory process moves very slowly. So even if the discussion we've had previously about the level of our licensee fees changes with new budgetary information, the fact is that we still do and have been approved to proceed in putting together that language and moving it forward. But there, of course, obviously would be substantial public comment periods for any of that. And we would definitely look forward to hearing from other stakeholders in the field. Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. That concludes the report of the Ledge Reg Committee, other than the action items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So we have, am I correct that we have 2 action items that we need to vote on?
Yes, Madam President.
Let's see. So the first one would be to accept the public comments and recommended responses into the final phase rulemaking of 16 CCR sections 2521 and 2522. Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Right. Are there questions from the board about this? Oh, I see Ms. Yamaguchi's hand is up.
My apologies, I'll lower that.
Oh, no worries. Are there questions from the board regarding that final phase rulemaking? I think we have discussed it some. Are there any further public comments?
This is the moderator. I see no further public comments, but I do see board member Tara's hand up.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Rooks.
Oh, my apologies. It was up to speak on behalf of what the site techs were saying, the public comments, but it's okay. I don't have any comment on what you're saying now. Thank you.
Do we have a motion if we have no public comment?
The motion is out of committee, Madam Chair.
So we don't need a second either, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. So we can take a roll call vote. Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Ms. Rooks?
Yes.
Ms. Rubalcava?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
And my name is Carol Mountain, and I vote yes. This vote is approved by a unanimous majority. All right, the second motion from the committee specific to the psychiatric technician rulemaking is that the board adopt the public comments and recommended responses as reflected in the proposed language received in the meeting packet, with the exception of minor and non-substantive changes, and authorize staff to incorporate the public comments and recommended responses into the final phase rulemaking for 16 CCR sections 2521 and 2522. Are there questions?
That's
Yes.
2578 and 2579.
Sorry. 2578 and 2579, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let's stand corrected on that. Are there any questions from the board at this time? I do not see any hands raised. Is there any public comment?
This is the moderator. I do not see any further public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. I will do a roll call and establish who's in favor, opposed, or abstains. Once again, Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Ms. Rooks?
Yes.
Ms. Rubalcava?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
And I am Carol Mountain, and I also vote yes. So this motion is approved by unanimous vote. Thank you, John, for your report, Mr. Durkin. Okay, we'll move to item 10A, which is the Enforcement Division report. Ms. Woods, will you please provide this report?
Oh, yes, thank you. So you do have the report in your packets. Please let me know if you have any questions on that. I do have some things to say about our process backlog of reinstatements, ETP and MOP hearings, and also cost recovery, but I'd like to answer the other questions first if you have any.
I do not see any raised hands at this time.
All right, so I will go ahead and start with our backlog of reinstatements, ETP, and MOP hearings. So the board has heard petitions for early terminations of probation, modifications of probation, those are ETPs or MOPs, and reinstatements at its board meetings for decades. Currently, one day of each board meeting, which is 4 days per year, is dedicated to hearing these petitions. During the pandemic, the number of petitioners is limited to 5 per board meeting, but typically we have 8 with no pandemic. The demand for the petition hearings keeps increasing. Petitioners are required to have their petitions heard in a highly public venue and submit themselves to direct questioning by the board members. Following the petitioner hearings, the board members discuss the cases in closed session, and a decision granting or denying each petition is eventually issued. Currently, there's a significant backlog for board hearings for ETPs, MOPs, and reinstatements. The next opening for hearing is February of 2023. This is an issue for many licensees who wish to pursue an ETP or MOP, as they are denied the opportunity as their probation ends prior to the next available appointment. Those pursuing a reinstatement are forced to wait a long amount of time before presenting their case to the board. The following are the current statistics on those waiting to have their case heard by the board, excluding those ETPs or MOPs whose probation terms end before they can be heard. We have 44 reinstatements from 2020. We have 5 reinstatements from 2019. We have 4 ETPs from 2020, 3 MOPs from 2020, which is a total of 56 licensees awaiting a board hearing. Currently, the discipline unit recommends that petitions for reinstatement, early termination, and modifications of probation no longer be heard at the quarterly board meetings. Instead, we propose that those petitions be heard by the Office of Administrative Hearings, or OAH, directly, which is similar to other board meetings. The board will retain its rights to continue to vote on these issues as they are handled. The discipline unit also recommends that those who are petitioning for reinstatement and have surrendered their license while on probation and do not have any new serious issues or offenses have their petitions heard by the Office of Administrative Hearings directly, similar to all other discipline hearings. Those petitioners to be considered for this opportunity must meet the following criteria. They surrendered their license while on probation, had their case reviewed by the board and received a board vote to accept them being placed on probation, and have had no significant changes to the facts of the case since the hearing. This means no new arrests, that a petition to revoke probation was not filed and then a surrender accepted subsequently in order to keep the PTR from being finalized, or any serious noncompliance issues with their probation terms and conditions while on probation. Are there any questions?
I do not see any raised hands at this time.
All right, then I will go ahead and go on to cost recovery. Cost recovery is the process that BVMPT uses to cover costs associated with investigating a complaint, sending it to the Attorney General's office for preparation, and filing an accusation or petition to revoke probation and the cost of the hearing. The board cannot increase the amount of cost recovery beyond the administrative law judge's order. The board only has the power to reduce or eliminate the amount. Currently, BVMPT statutes do not contain a specific statutory authorization relating to costs, which means that the administrative law judge is required to award costs. The board's request for recovery is made to the administrative law judge, or ALJ, who decides how much of the board's expenditures will be remunerated. The ALJ may reward the board the full cost or partial cost or may reject the board's request. The ALJ currently orders costs due upon reinstatement or as a part of the probation terms and conditions. Due upon reinstatement means that we are only allowed to collect funds if the licensee reinstates. The board may require full payment as a condition precedent to the issuance of the reinstated license, or at its discretion may permit the reinstated licensee to establish a payment plan. For those who have been ordered to pay and have not done so, the board may enforce the award through the tax refund offset program administered by the Franchise Tax Board, or FTB. BVMPT is required to send the debtor 3 notices prior to sending the matter to FTB for collection. Upon collection, FTB sends the funds back to us and it is placed into the board's budget. For probationers, the licensee can request a payment plan approved by the board or its designee. Whether or not the licensee establishes a payment plan, they are responsible for paying the entire sum 3 months prior to the end of probation. If they fail to pay in full, the board can revoke the probation as the licensee failed to follow the terms and conditions. Licensees can request to extend their probation by up to a year so that they have extended amount of time to pay cost recovery. You should all have the PowerPoint in your packet, but I would like to draw your attention to cost recovery by the numbers. These are the current numbers that that we have. So in fiscal year 19-20, it cost us approximately $6.5 million for enforcement. The amount of cost recovery owed is under $900,000. The amount of cost recovery recovered was about $240. Currently, we have a total cost recovery owed of approximately $4 million. I will say that the number is approximate because as hearings are, more discipline is completed and more cases are done, the number goes up. And then as FTB collects more money or the board collects money, the number goes down. So it fluctuates from day to day. So I will say it's an approximately $4 million amount is owed to us. Approximately $3 million of that is due upon reinstatement, which means if the licensees never reinstate, we can never collect the funds. And a total at FTB right now waiting for collection is approximately $900,000. As I said, approximately because as they collect, the number goes down. And as we send over, the number goes up. Are there any questions about cost recovery?
Okay, this is what I was saying. Yes. This is Ms. Turner.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Turner.
Thank you. Hey, so I'm glad, thank you for this report because we were wondering, or at least I was wondering about this issue. And so where in our financial statement can we find this as a line item? Is it entitled cost recovery? I don't think so, because otherwise I don't think I would have asked about it.
Ms. Turner, if I may, we have decided, we figured that this is charted in a very large lump as miscellaneous income, miscellaneous revenue, and it's not really easy to break out the individual little bits and bobs from month to month, but it's charted in that miscellaneous category.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Oh, I see Ms. Norton has a question.
Yes. I have so many questions, I don't know where to start. So I did try to listen to, so I appreciate the report, but that was like a really fast report. And I did try to listen to the Enforcement Committee meeting minutes. And I did listen to a certain point. Again, it's not the best way to do this. I need someone to go over again what the recommendation actually is. Because as I listened to that enforcement committee meetings, I recall hearing a discussion about how the board was not, the overall board was not on board with not hearing cases or deciding cases ourselves. And there was, the only thing that was going to be presented was to give priority to the only thing that was able to give priority was the early termination and the modifications of probation, and that would be a preference to do that they could do in-house would be to put them to the top. But if someone could go over one more time.
So you would like me to go back to reinstatement, ETP, and MOP hearings? Okay. So our recommendation is to discontinue hearing petitions for ETPs and MOPs at board hearings and have them heard by OAH directly. The board will still vote on accepting these decisions or not. So that will save us time and expense by sending it there. Right now, that would take 7 potential hearings. I will say there's more than that, as those were people whose probation ends after they could be heard by the board meeting. We have others requesting to be heard, but we're not allowed to hear them because they their probation ends before the board could hear them, which is a due process issue, I will say. I will also say we are recommending that those who are petitioning for reinstatement and had already surrendered their license on probation, because the board has already heard them and the case has already been adjudicated, most of them are surrendering for, there's 2 basic reasons, right? There's people who are surrendering because they aren't able to meet the terms and conditions of probation, and they themselves have realized that, whether that be they're unable to pay costs for drug testing, whether they're just not in the right headspace right now to adhere to our recommendations or in our requirements. So those folks, they look at themselves and they say, hey, you know what, I'm not ready to do this. And they hand us their license back, and those folks are the ones that we would like to be able to send to OAH and then have the board vote on so that they're not waiting years to be heard again. And since there's been no serious or material change in their stance, we believe that the board, since they have once approved them, would reapprove that probation term. The other folks that would still come to the board and have to articulate why they needed to have why they should be reinstatement would be those who had had serious material changes to their petition since the last time the board heard, which would include a petition to revoke their probation. They've had criminal charges. They were unable to adhere to the terms and conditions of license up because we were going to take disciplinary action against their license.
Okay, thank you for that. But if we send cases to the Office of Administrative Hearing, doesn't that cost us money?
Yes, but so having more board, it costs us a significant amount less to send it to OAH and then out for a board vote than it does to host a board meeting. And then we also have the due process issue. Quite frankly, we're in February of 2023 as of a few days ago. We are only counting complete petitions. So we have people who are wanting to reinstate but have not submitted completed paperwork. Once they do, they'll be added to the list. I will say, looking at how many reinstatements we're getting, the pandemic has definitely struck a chord with many people who had their license revoked or removed. We're seeing those numbers spike, and it just keeps getting higher and higher. So the other option is to add more hearing dates to the board in order to have them heard. That would be, if we have 56 total licensees being heard, let's call it 50, that would be 10 more hearings. That would be 10 more days, which means we would need to add basically a day a month, since you wouldn't probably want to add November and December since those are holiday months and maybe more difficult for people to come. So we would need to add a board hearing for the next 10 months to even get caught back up.
Hi, everybody.
And that's not including what we'll see come in as we go.
We log in for Mr. Maxey. So we'll give him a few minutes to see and make sure he can log in.
This is the moderator. I'm hearing background noise from, don't see where it's coming from because everybody's mic is off.
Ms. Norton, do you have other comments? Your hand is still raised.
Oh, No, I was just listening to the to her response to my question. So that clears it up somewhat. Is this an action item for today?
Ms. Norton, this is Elaine Yamaguchi again. It is and it is not. What we had sought to do today is get a gauge from the board members, and I think to fine point what Ms. Woods was saying, we want to put before the board some discussion points here. One being the ETP and MOP redirect, one being additional hearings, whether that be like a mid, one or two in between board meetings, or doubling up at the board meeting themselves. In other words, doing hearings both Wednesday and Thursday. So what we wanted to do is get kind of a temperature check from the board members to see how best it would work, and then based on, I think, that temperature check, we would recommend then that the executive committee and I work on probably sending out like a doodle poll on calendaring, but to figure out a way forward. Clearly, we have a significant backlog that needs to be addressed. It's not right to keep these people waiting for 2 years, and it's not good for the consumers either. But Ms. Woods is also very clear that that's what we have in hand right now, and there will be probably significant additions as we go forward. So, as I said, we would really value, I think, some thoughts from the board members on, would you prefer to say?
I'm sorry, Elaine. Can you hold on 1 second? Because I don't know what's happening, but I can now hear Vicky's conversation and Mr. Maxey's conversation through my computer, even though I haven't dialed in on my computer. So I don't know if anyone else hears this.
That's really odd.
This is Vicky, the moderator. My mic is actually muted, so I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I can hear your private conversation with Mr. Maxey.
This is the moderator.
I'm actually not speaking with Mr. Maxey. I'm not sure what's going on.
I wonder if somebody's playing video in the background of a prior meeting. That could be. Anyway,
So loud I couldn't hear what you were saying.
that's all right. Are you hearing now?
I am hearing now. Yes.
Good deal. So as I said, what we had hoped to do, I think, today is at the very least get a sense from the board members what the optimum path forward would be. Should we look at doubling up on board meetings quarterly? Should we continue the board meetings hearings and add one in between board meetings? Should we go once a month? Basically, like I said, I kind of wanted to hear some input, and then based on that input, I think with no objection from the board, to work with the president and vice president to put together a proposed calendar, and we have an overall board calendar on the agenda for in a few minutes, but this would obviously it would be a subsequent addition to that later. Madam Chair?
Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. That was excellent. It looks like Ms. Turner has a comment.
Yes. All right. So I'm not looking for additional work. However, I think I've expressed concern in the past about the board being in the position of continually, potentially delegating their duties and responsibilities to others, whether it's to the executive officer, whether it's to the AG's office. We should try our best to figure out how to, perform our responsibilities. That's why we're here. And I don't think it's been demonstrated yet that we cannot accommodate these cases. And so, yes, let's work hard to retain our responsibilities, because every time we're faced with sunset legislation, they evaluate whether there's a need for our board or not. And so if you continue to delegate your responsibilities, then maybe you're not needed. So that's my comment on this.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Amazola de Herrera.
Hi, yes. I completely agree with my colleague that it's important for the board to be executing our duties, and I think the board has the strength of having a diverse voice, diverse experiences, diverse also backgrounds, and diverse careers. And the purpose of our board is to us together make these decisions. And we heard this on Wednesday, and one of our presenters talk about how this is the strength of a board to have diversity. So that being said, I also agree. Is not that I'm advocating to increase our workload, but I am advocating to ensure that the board, as a diverse board, comes together and makes these important decisions. And for me personally, because it was a very direct ask from our EO, for me, I think that a monthly meeting that would work best. And this is more about, it's already difficult to take 3 days off for my work, since I'm a public member and I do have full-time employment, and I have other public service responsibilities. And so I would say for me, adding a 4th day to a 3-day meeting would not work as well as having a monthly meeting that is well organized and structured to review cases.
Thank you, Ms. Amazola de Herrera. I see Ms. Carpenter has her hand up.
Yes, I'd like to add my voice to Ms. Amazola de Herrera. I agree that a monthly meeting would be less onerous than piling another day onto an already 3-day meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Norton?
I just want to be sure that I'm understanding that's currently being somewhat suggested, and that is that the early terminations of probation, the modifications to probations, and the people that have surrendered their licenses voluntarily, those are the only cases that would go to the OAH, which would then free us up to do the cases that we have to have for the reinstatements.
That's correct.
Okay. Secondly, if we do not do something, then we are behind the 8 ball with timeliness as well. And then thirdly, there is a cost associated with sending to the OAH. But what I've heard is that it costs less to send to the OAH than to create more hearing dates. And so I guess I'd like more information on that in order to be able to make an educated decision about what is the best way to go here.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. Ms. Yamaguchi, can you respond to that? She was asking about the cost of that.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. We don't have the exact numbers in front of us right now, and I would also remind the board that even if the board resolves to meet monthly, we do still then have to and the DAGs to make sure that there's the availability from on their end which is going to take some work, but, obviously everybody's motivated to make sure that the work is done in a timely manner and that the due process is moved forward. So why don't I suggest this then? If the enforcement staff could possibly rough up some numbers and maybe even option 1, option 2, option 3, and what that would involve in terms of cost and in terms of time. And I believe the enforcement committee is scheduled to meet in January, or should anyway. And we could easily have that proposal for that. And we could also probably have a rough mock-up for the execs in a couple of weeks. But I think then what I'm hearing would basically make me think that our best course of action would be to spend a little time putting together a more detailed and costed out plans of action options, and that probably could not be approved and enacted before the February board meeting.
This is Ms. Turner, and I wanted to add, keep in mind that we're down to an hourly rate of, I don't remember what I calculated, if it was 11 or 12 or $13 an hour versus the DAG, $200 to $300 something an hour. So we're not even being paid $100 a day, as far as I know. So please consider that when you calculate the costs.
Ms. Amazola de Herrera, your hand is still up. Do you still have a further comment?
No, I apologize.
And Ms. Norton, your hand is also still up.
Yes, I'm just throwing this out there. So I'm just wondering, it does seem now that since we have our committees up and running again, that our second day of, I'm using air quotes, administrative work is only taking half a day now. And we do have these 2 days. I'm wondering if we can add more reinstatement hearings to the second day as a small test of change to see if that will help at all. Now that our second day meetings are substantially shorter than they were in the past.
Ms. Yamaguchi?
I think that does make sense, and I think the I think that does work out. And to both Ms. Norton and Ms. Turner's points, we would certainly be factoring in the board's time and per diem. But no, that's a good point, Ms. Norton. That it seems as though our board meetings have been running a lot more efficiently, and we should be able to kind of sandwich in some more hearing work. So as I said, why don't we put together that more in-depth analysis and proposal, and I think that's really interesting.
So, Ms. Amazola de Herrera, your hand is up again. Do you have something further to say?
Yes. Just to continue to add to the discussion about the doing half a day of half a day administrative and half a day to review cases. I think I support that action or that plan, and I would like to say, since it will only be half a day, maybe adding closed session on that day, because oftentimes when we have a full day of cases and then we have a day of closed session, it gets really lengthy in time, and you know, we're human, we get exhausted. So just wanted to put that out also.
Okay, other comments about this topic? It doesn't sound like we need a motion at this time. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct, Madam Chair.
All right. Other comments from the board or anyone else? Are we ready to move on then? I'm just not totally clear. To 10A, the Enforcement Committee report.
Madam Chair, we need to go back to the cost recovery discussion.
Oh, right. We definitely got a little derailed. Sorry about that. We were voting on the second motion from the committee. Is that correct? My apologies. I got lost with the discussion we were having. Did we complete 16 CCR sections 2579 and 25?
That was the Legend Regs Committee report, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
Hi.
It's okay, I understand. The pages get out of order.
They do. 12.
This is Antoinette. So I just needed to talk to you about the, see if you had any questions, and two, offer you the potential opportunities for change. Currently with cost recovery, other boards right now, accounting has regulations allowing costs to be recovered 120 days after the decision is adopted, which is different than ours. If we did that, the $3 million we cannot collect in the future would be considered collectible, not specifically that $3 million unless we went back, but any further millions that came in would be considered collectible. Respiratory Care Board uses a collection agency as a way to collect funds. Other potential opportunities are additional regulations that give the board authority to collect once the decision has been adopted. This could be for all cases or for all cases moving forward. Update our surrender forms to ensure we can continue to collect after license surrender. And create minimums for payment plans to ensure it does not cost the board more to process the check than the check is worth. Are there any questions?
It looks like there are no questions from the board. Thank you, Ms. Wood. Is there any public comment?
I do not see any at this time, Dr. Mountain. There's none in the audience.
Thank you. Are there additional items for the Enforcement Division report, or is it completed?
It is completed.
Thank you so much. Item 10A is the Enforcement Committee report. Mr. Maxey, will you please provide this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we, based on a report from Antoinette Wood, the Enforcement Division Chief, had conversations around some of the things that we needed to do moving forward for the Enforcement Committee, and I believe the report that she's provided is suffice. Ms. Yamaguchi, was there some, I'm not seeing on this what we discussed from our meeting, from the agenda.
Mr. Maxey, let me defer back to Ms. Woods on the structure of the proposal for.
Hello. We were going to see if the board would prefer us to create, much like we had talked about for the reinstatements, a plan to move forward with cost recovery so that we can handle the issues that were noted. We can get that report together, and then it can go to executive committee and then the full board.
Okay.
We would need a motion on that, I believe.
We do need a motion on that.
I believe so.
Okay. Would anyone like to entertain that motion?
Donna has her hand up.
Yeah, I can't see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do have my hand up, so it's not to consider a motion, though. I wanted to, first of all, thank for the PowerPoint for cost recovery, because it was much more beneficial to really understand what's going on there. So thank you for the PowerPoint. Secondly, the motion that, if I'm understanding correctly, what is coming out of the enforcement committee would be for further details to be determined and a process or a put in place for cost recovery that would then go to the executive committee to be vetted and then come to the board via the executive committee. Is that what I just heard?
That's correct.
So then I'm a process person. I'm just wondering why it would go from the enforcement committee to the executive committee and then to the full board.
Michelle Gucci.
That's a fair question. It doesn't have to. We had initially thought through that that the enforcement committee would be designing and recommending that policy part of it, and then the executive committee would look at it on a much more operational level. But there's no reason why it couldn't go directly from the enforcement committee to the board.
Ms. Norton, your hand is still raised. Do you have further comments?
No. I was just, it was a process question and I couldn't find my button here. It's just a process question. I'm not opposed to it going to the enforcement or to the executive committee. I was just wondering why the deviation, that's all. Thank you. I guess I would so move then that the further delving into this, I don't know what kind of a motion that you need, but the further delving into the cost recovery procedure policy updating be dealt with. I don't know, Mr. Swenson, help with the motion here. I don't know what motion you really need.
While I'm not convinced a motion is necessary, it would be something like this. I move to adopt the recommendation from the enforcement division that the matter of cost recovery be referred to the enforcement committee for further study, and that their findings and recommendations be referred to the executive committee before being presented to the board at a future board meeting.
Thank you for that. And I guess as a process person, I guess the issue that I have with that is that there is no actual recommendation that the board can see.
That proposed motion contemplates the matter that was addressed during the verbal report of the enforcement division. That was the recommendation. That part can be stricken. If you want to focus on the process, you could simply say that the question of cost recovery will be referred to the enforcement committee for further study, after which will be directed or returned to the executive committee prior to it being referred to the full board for appropriate action at a future board meeting.
Okay, and then what do we do with the, where are we at with a petitioner hearing? So that is also, we're going to get information and come back with that, right? So that would not be part of this motion.
That's correct.
If there is a need for a motion, I will make the motion that Mr. Swenson just highlighted for.
Mr. Swenson, would we need a second so we can vote on this? And I see Ms. Carpenter has her hand raised.
A second is required. Thank you.
I'm the second to require. Yes, I'm the second that's required.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson, would I need public comment for this?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So let's open it up to see if there's any public comment on this matter.
This is the moderator. I do not see any hands up in the public, and there are no comments at this time.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Well, I think I'll screw this up. Mr. Swenson, can you help with what was moved and seconded?
Thank you. The motion was to refer the issue of cost recovery to the Enforcement Committee for further study, after which it will be referred or directed to the Executive Committee before coming back to the full board at a future board meeting for appropriate action.
Thank you. I'd like to take a roll call vote on that. I don't see any further hands raised. Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yeah.
Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Ms. Rooks?
Yes.
Ms. Rubalcaba? Melissa?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Turner?
Yes.
And I'm Carol Mountain, and I also vote yes. We're ready to move on to item number 11, which is the board calendar. Ms. Yamaguchi, will you provide this information?
Madam Chair, the calendar before you, the calendar dates for 2021, for the most part, were already approved last year, but we do need to make a few minor changes to accommodate some other dates, most notably the NCSBN annual meeting, which may or may not require us to travel this year, but we're all hopeful. And we had also wanted to, of course, move forward and pencil in the dates for 2022 to at least lock down the dates of the board meetings themselves. So given the fact that we want to have a little bit more discussion on the augmented hearing schedule, I would recommend that the board approve this calendar at this point, and then we would probably bring it back to supplement that with our hearing schedule at a future meeting, most likely in February. I have for questions at this point.
Ms. Yamaguchi, just for clarification, we are approving the calendar with the change for the August board meeting 2021, moving to the dates of, let me see, it's on here. 25 to 27 instead of 18 to 20, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for the clarification. Are there other questions from the board? Seeing no questions, are there public comments?
This is the moderator. I do not see any at this time.
Do we have a motion from the board to approve the calendar?
John Deerking would so move.
Thank you. And do we have a second? Thank you.
Second.
All right, being moved and seconded, we'll go forward with a roll call vote on approving the 2021 and 2022 calendar as presented.
Madam Chair, may we please have public comment first?
Oh, sure. Is there any additional public comment?
There are none.
Thank you. With no public comment, we will move forward with a roll call vote on approving the calendar for 2021-2022. Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Ms. Rooks?
Yes.
Ms. Rubalcava?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
And I'm Carol Mountain, and I vote yes. That is carried by a unanimous vote. Item 12 is public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I have checked and there are no further public comments at this time.
Thank you. Then we will move on to item 13, suggestions for future agenda items. Board members, please raise your hand if you have any suggestions for future agenda items. Seeing no hands raised, are there any public comments?
I see none at this time.
All right, item 14 is adjournment. I adjourn this meeting as of 12:51 p.m.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend and have a great weekend.
Be safe.
Have a great
Thank
weekend,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good job, Vicky.
Thank you, everybody.
Great job,
Thank
Vicki. Thank you.
You all make it pretty easy. Thank you.
And thank you, Carol.